好多想象，总是对找不到解答的问题，有太多的迷茫，太多的绝望，别投降。
我有我最最独特紧握的倔强，我相信平凡的我们也可以用100度信仰，100度希望能翱翔。
不需要向谁证明自己多么不一样，只要能坚守着心中最原始的善良。还那么年轻，我们要冒险，要疯狂，拼凑自己的梦想，然后骄傲绽放。不需要向谁证明自己已经不一样，会有人看见我的眼神里闪耀的光，用100度吸热血，燃烧生命火花，在逆着风的地方，更用力大声唱。
陨落的星光可能燃烧了海洋，微小的蝴蝶翅膀改变了远方。不需要向谁证明自己多么不一样，只要能坚守着心中最原始的善良。还那么年轻，我们要冒险，要疯狂，
拼凑自己的梦想，然后骄傲绽放。不需要向谁证明自己已经不一样，会有人看见我的眼神里闪耀的光，用100度吸热血，燃烧生命火花，在逆着风的地方，更用力大声唱。不需要向谁证明自己已经不一样，会有人看见我的眼神里闪耀的光，用100度吸热血，燃烧生命火花，在逆着风的地方，更用力大声唱。不需要向谁证明自己已经不一样，会有人看见我的眼神里闪耀的光，用100度吸热血，燃烧生命火花，在逆着风的地方，更用力大声唱。
总是对没来的未来好多想象，总是对找不到解答的问题，有太多的迷茫，太多的绝望，别投降。
我有我最最独特紧握的倔强，我相信平凡的我们也可以用100度信仰，100度希望能翱翔。
不需要向谁证明自己多么不一样，只要能坚守着心中最原始。
Okay, good evening to all our viewers, whether you are viewing from Facebook or YouTube. We welcome you to join our online English forum tonight. with the topic of resurgence of amendments to Act 355. The reason of us organizing this forum, there are three organizers: Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia, Center for Malaysian Chinese Study, and Persatuan Belia Siangan Malaysia. And this is after it came to light that our Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Yaakob has recently released a statement during the parliamentary section that the federal government was currently in the midst of drafting the Syariah Court Criminal Jurisdiction Amendment Act to increase the criminal powers of Syariah Court. And this has raised concerns and unrest among non-Islamic community. And then this is followed by another report that the Syariah Courts Criminal Jurisdiction Amendment Bill is scheduled to be presented to the states, I think, with 2 more days to go for deliberations in the Islamic and Civil Law Coordinating Conference in October. Once it is finalized and further information from the federal government that it will be tabled in Parliament this year. Then before this, IUU 355 was tabled by past President Datuk Seri Abdul Hadi Awang for the first reading in the Dewan Rakyat on May 26, 2016 as a private member's bill. Some of the proposed amendments included raising the Syariah Court's maximum sentencing limits to 30 years jail, 100,000 fine, and 100 strokes of the cane. The current limits are 3 years jail, 5,000 fine, and 6 strokes. Therefore, the organizers wish to provide a platform for speakers from different backgrounds to share rationally on the potential effects of this proposed amendment to Syariah Court Criminal Jurisdiction Act 1965 and raise awareness among the public on these amendments. Besides, we also hope that we can provide a platform for the public to understand the developmental history of freedom to religion, Syariah Court, Criminal Jurisdiction Act 1965, and the role of Syariah Court, how it developed throughout the years. Okay, and today we are also honored to invite 2 speakers represent different area. So we'll now give a brief introductions of our speaker. Our first speaker is Prof. Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin. Prof is a professor in School of Architecture and Built Environment, UCSI University. He is also a prolific writer and speaker in different areas, including architecture, politics, social issues, religious matters, and education. He was educated in the USA at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and he also obtained his Master and Bachelor of Science in Architecture. His PhD was obtained in the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. Apart from being a professor, he has also authored and published 52 books to date on architecture concerning Islam, mosque, housing, community building and planning, and administrative centers. He is also a winner of 4 National Book Awards. He is currently a columnist in the Star and Sinchu Daily. Before that, he also served as a columnist for several new media, including the Borneo Post, Free Malaysia Today, Sinar Harian, and Utusan Malaysia. Some of his latest books include Rethinking Malaysia by Gerak Budaya and Not the Islam I Know by ZI Publications. So this is the impressive resume of our Prof. Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin. Now let's move on to our second speaker. We are honored to have Siti Zabeda Kashim, or more commonly known as Siti Kashim, with us tonight. She is a lawyer and activist for civil liberties and human rights in Malaysia. She obtained her law degree from Queen's Mary College, University of London, and was called to the bar under the Honourable Society of Grace in London. Siti has consistently spoken up against the actions by the Islamic religious authorities and Malaysian government. And he is considered as our frontliner in the fight against persecution by authorities against marginalized peoples, especially for freedom of and from religion, native and aboriginals, and the trans community. However, he has also been arrested and maliciously persecuted for defending these communities and is a recipient of many online threats and abuses due to her work. Despite all these disappointing circumstances, Siti still hopes to see Malaysia free from the mental bondage of indoctrination by the authorities in religious matters, particularly the extremist version of Islam. Siti is also a writer for Malaysia's largest English language daily, The Star, under City Lights. She is also the founder of the activist foundation, Malaysian Action for Justice and Unity, or known as MAJU, which is aimed at uniting Malaysians to become a change agent for more liberal, moderate, and progressive Malaysia. Okay, so it can be summarized that Prof. Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin will be sharing more from the perspective of an academician and from the perspective, from the spiritual perspective, while Siti Kashim will be sharing based on her profession as a lawyer and also her involvement as an activist. Therefore, now we will go to our round one. We would like to listen to both speakers to share their thoughts and perspective on the situation of freedom of religion in Malaysia. We will start with Prof. Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin first, and then followed by Siti Kashim. So, Prof, the question I would like to pose to you is, in your years of experience being an academician, what is your views on the development of freedom of religion in Malaysia? Is this clause safeguarding the freedom of religion still being respected by whether it's the government or the authorities or even the people? So, Prof, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you, Yo, and the Buddhist Society for inviting me and my friend Siti Kasim to give our thoughts. I really wish that this forum was actually organized by a Muslim Malay group who would invite, but I guess Siti and I tak laku, okay, in terms of the the Malay or the Muslim group. So we have to have the Buddhist group to invite. This is a very sensitive topic in a sense that Parti Islam Malaysia is in power. They are backed by also all the conservative muftis in this country, as well as the so-called silent academia, who I assume mostly are all also conservative. So it's a very, very orang kata apa, a suicide run, if you want to talk about it. But then I'm a Muslim. I need to also explain things from the perspective of Islam, and also a Malaysian. I'm a pensioner. I do think Siti is a pensioner from the government. So my pension is paid by the taxpayers, which includes all the faith and races in this country. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to my fellow Malaysians for my pension. And so that is why I am here as a Malay, as a Malaysian, and as a Muslim. Now, with regard to this aspect of so-called freedom of religion, which once upon a time, 40 years ago, is not an issue. But now the word freedom, the word progressive, the word moderate, the word Siti Kasim or the word Tajuddin is no longer accepted as a very good anything to do with Islam. All right. Now I'll just give you a very simple aspect about in academia. In my research on mosque architecture, because I'm trying to be very careful here, in mosque architecture, I found that you don't really have to build a minaret. Okay, because the minaret is actually an element related to the call of adhan as well as the call of prayer. If one researched this in the earlier days, number one, the azan has nothing to do with is not what we call revelation from God. Only salat is the revelation from God. And the purpose of the azan is to call people at one single time for prayers. Okay. Now, what happens then when you already have the watch and the clock? In the olden days, the manara is something that relates to fire. You light a fire, because if you go call an azan from the top of the minaret, nobody's going to listen, nobody's going to hear you in the olden days. The Malay mosque in the traditional world, they don't have the minaret. They have what is called the rumah tabuh. I'm not sure whether you know that. Rumah taboh means it's a low structure above the entrance or something like that. It's not very tall structure, so they put a drum, okay, and so they would knock it. So it's called a taboh, or in another one is a bedok, which is a timber kind of a drum. So when they call for prayers, they would knock this drum or this bedok. Okay. Now the advent of the minaret actually is by architects who follows their client, who visits Turkey and all these places, and then they would put up this minaret. And so the argument here is that, number one, when I argue in my thesis, I say you don't need to have a minaret at all. Okay, because number one, you can tell the time. Okay, now here is the situation. This is an academic argument backed by historical research, also backed by juristic rulings about azan and all that. In the United States, we don't call the azan to the outside because it is infringement upon the privacy of the other people. So when you look at in Malaysia, you have the UTM Mosque having 6 minarets. You have the Shah Alam Mosque having 4 minarets. And I asked the question, why can't we spend the money for the minaret to feed the poor? Because they are, as long from my reading of Islam, okay, I've read many hadith, and I have the impression that the Prophet Muhammad would not be, understanding when he says that this minaret costs 3 million ringgit, 4 minarets would cost probably 12 million ringgit, and there are children living under bridges. What's going on? Okay, so if I were to speak like that, many of the Muslims would reject that because of what is called tradition. Tradition means you have been, calling for adhan, you have been building minarets. 1 minaret is good, 2 minaret is better, 4 lagi bagus. So this is the problem of understanding what you said just now as freedom of religion, because this freedom of religion doesn't come into the so-called, even the uneducated people in the kampung, as well as the professors in the universities, because I have been with these people. The mentioning of the word freedom, they think of all sorts of wild parties and things like that. Why? Because the idea of Islam is learned through what is called tradition only. It's not learned through a critical analysis. Okay, when you become a Muslim, I just gave a lecture this morning. There are 3 ways: tradition, meaning you inherit the tradition, or second, a personal search. That is the best kind of faith. And third, forced conversion, whether it is coerced or forced or marketed in a certain way. So these are the ways in which you come into religion. Now, most people, whether they are educated at universities or educated just in the school, come through tradition only. And so with tradition, there is no element of critical process of analysis. So when you talk about freedom of religion, once upon a time, okay, it is not that an issue. But after the so-called Islamic Reformation of the 80s, something happened that most Muslims are now becoming more religious, but they are becoming more religious in the traditional aspect. I'm not saying tradition is bad. I'm just saying that tradition doesn't follow a certain way of looking at it. I once asked a professor of education when he was talking about how to educate and all that, and I said, what do you do with religious framework and structure of knowledge? Because religious framework structure of knowledge doesn't come under the manner in which you are describing, which is the mode of questioning, inquiry, and rethinking. These are the elements of what we call academia, a critical analysis of academia. But this tradition, you have to trust someone. You trust the mufti, you trust the guru, you trust this, you trust that. You don't question. So now, when I would say easily 80% of Malays are all conservative and Muslim who learn Islam through tradition, I find that the question of so-called freedom of religion becomes a very, very difficult topic where the Muslims automatically would think that it is a threat to their existence, and they are taught in the traditional way to defend their religion. Okay, to defend their religion. I have never in my readings have this concept of defending religion. What for? Okay, religion is religion. It's Islam. It is there. Okay, it's not a person. You can't kill the person. It is an understanding. It comes from history. It is a philosophy construct. It's a spiritual construct. It's there. You can't kill it. You can't make it disappear. But from people, the idea here is that, oh, you have less people who are Muslim, you have less mosques, you have less this. They are equated with numbers, and I don't understand why you want to equate things with number. Very proud there are 2 billion Muslim. Not so happy lah if there's only 1 billion Muslim. So what? If you have 2 billion Muslims who are tak guna, rasuah sana sini, and corrupt and all that, what for? But that's not the case here. So to answer your question here, freedom of religion is under attack because number one, most of the Muslims have received Islam in the traditional construct. Number two, academia is useless. Okay, we have International Islamic University, also not very, very useful at all. I don't see them. I know there are discourses of it in the university through my students who become postgraduate students. But I always ask, how come it's not out there? How come it's not out in the open? Then we have the so-called moderate Islamic group like ABIM and Ikram. Where are these people? Why are these people when there is the issue of the shrine, when the issue of the Allah issue and all that? Where are these people? Okay, so here becomes a huge problem about this aspect about when you talk about freedom of religion, and the fact that a Buddhist society is organizing something on Islam is already a powder keg in the eyes of many Muslims.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for his sharing. Especially, I'm quite interested by the analysis that is to understanding a religion is not only about the architectural aspect, the building, the number of followers, but it's best to be followed if it's driven by the personal search for the meaning in life and how to interpret the definition of freedom of religion from the perspective of Islam. I hope our viewers could also listen to have a more holistic understanding how to define this term and how to enable us to understand people from other religions or other faiths as well. Okay, so let's move to our second speaker, Siti Kashim. The question is almost similar to Prof. Wan. In your years of experience being a lawyer and activist, what is your views on the development of freedom of religion in Malaysia? Do you think that is heading forward or is heading backward?
Thank you very much to the organizer for inviting me. I am very honored to be here. I'm afraid my talk is going to be a bit boring, maybe, because what I'm going to say is based mainly on laws and the development of the law and what's happening with regards all concerning to the law. So anyway, to answer the question, I will say that from the outset, I conclude that we are regressing badly, not just in terms of freedom of religion, but also in many aspects of what we understand under the international human rights of freedom, which is provided for under our constitution. But first of all, I must thank my learned brothers at law for their opinions and thoughts for this talk, on which I fully agree and adopted. They are Mr. Lim Heng Seng, Surendra, and Mr. Rosli Dahlan. So first of all, we must be clear in our minds that the Federal Constitution of Malaya is the grand norm of the Malaysian legal order. the ultimate norm against which the legality of all other norms or laws must be measured. It is the supreme law of the nation. It lays down the framework and basic structures for the governance of our nation, constituted by the Federation of the 9 Malay states and the 2 Straits settlements. So subsequently, in 1963, a new nation was birthed with North Borneo, now Sabah, and Sarawak joining Malaya to form Malaysia together with Singapore. The basic pillars which undergirded the Malayan nation were reasserted for the enlarged Malaysian nation. In fulfillment of preconditions of Sabah and Sarawak agreeing to confederate with Malaya, new provisions were engrafted onto the document to form the Federal Constitution of Malaysia. The Constitution is both foundational and fundamental for the nation and its people to continue to strive, survive, and thrive together. So, can please put the first slide on, yeah? Thank you very much. Okay, I wanted to speak on the first formation of the secular Malaysian nation with Islam as the religion of the Federation. But I think I will go beyond the time allotted to me since I think the other 3 subject matters are more important. If you want to know how Malaysia were formed as a secular Malaysian nation with Islam as the religion of the Federation, please read, look at Reid Commission, the Cobalt Commission, and also a memorandum submitted by Sabah and Sarawak during their formation. So I am going to go straight into the Islamization initiatives and impact of Islamization policies. Yeah. So this is quite important that people understand what is going on. So what are these? The concept of an Islamic state is premised on Islam as a political ideology and the supremacy of Sharia. In the post-Merdeka period from the early 1980s, demands by Islamic State proponents and activists, as well as the political responses of UMNO, set the stage for a unique form of Malaysian-style Islamization and the erosion of the basic structure and character of the Malaysian polity. In 1982, the UMNO-led government under the Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad announced the policy of inculcating 10 Islamic values that are universal in nature in the administration. These universal values are trust, responsibility, honesty, dedication, moderation, diligence, discipline, cooperation, honorable behavior, and thanksgiving. The initiative was hardly pursued with any degree of commitment or vigor. It became the launching pad and platform for gradualist Islamization of national policies, systems, and institutions as conceived by the religion bureaucrats, which have scant, if any, significance to the promotion of universal values. This was followed by former Prime Minister Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi concept of Islam Hadari, and then Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak with his Islam Wasatiyah. Now we go on to the third subject matter, which is getting more important. Islamization of laws and legal order. The Malaysian legal system is based on English common law together with statutes enacted by Parliament. These laws are administered by civil courts. Article 162 preserves the continuity of the common civil law which had been in place prior to the promulgation of the Constitution. The scope of Islamic law, which comes within the legislative power of the state, mainly pertains to personal law, offenses against precepts of Islam, and the establishment of Sharia courts. State Islamic laws apply, and state Sharia courts have jurisdiction only within their state boundaries and in respect of Muslims. Islamic State proponents demand the Islamization of laws and national legal order. The ultimate vision is for the establishment of a constitutional framework and a legal and judicial system in which Sharia law is the supreme law of the land, and the full implementation of Sharia law by Sharia courts. The underlying demand is that the Sharia is to be established as the grand norm for the nation's legal order. In his article, Making Laws Islamic in Malaysia, a Constitutional Perspective, the author Muhammad Imam offers a subtle strategy for Islamization of the national legal order. It should be low profile, pre-planned, graduated, and given a subtle secular or non-religious form and appearance, buttressed by secular or non-religious reasons. This will be most effective in the face of likely opposition, given the character of the Malaysian populace in a multi-religious and multicultural society. Muhammad Imam's rationale for the Islamization of laws in Malaysia appears to be premised upon the claim that Article 3 serves the same purpose as the declaration in the constitution of some Islamic countries that Sharia is to be the principal source of legislation. In Freedom of Religion under Federal Constitution of Malaysia, a reappraisal, he advances the view that Article 3 of the Constitution, far from being innocuous, cast upon the Federation a positive obligation to protect, defend, and promote the religion of Islam, and to assist, enable, and facilitate Muslims individually or collectively to order their lives in accordance with the injunctions of Islam. Here, I would like to point out that the version of some people are different with regards to their interpretation of Islam. So this is the version of the mainstream Islam, perhaps especially in Malaysia. I hope the viewers understand that many Muslims do not actually conform to that views of Islam. In our minds, the Islam that they portray is not Islamic at all. Okay, that is another subject matter. Anyway, according to Muhammad Imam, the positive obligation on the Malaysian Parliament to enact fundamental Islamic constitutional principles is to be effected by recourse to its powers of amending the Constitution. With regard to other legislation, he recommends that Malaysia emulate the Pakistan modality, whereby all laws are to be brought into conformity with the injunctions of the Quran and Sunnah, and that no law other than the personal laws of non-Muslims should be enacted repugnant to such injunctions. Muhammad Imam went on to advocate the strategy of judicial Islamization of the law by judges using their creative power in lawmaking when adjudicating cases brought before them. The same strategy based on subtlety and imperceptibility is recommended. It is not difficult for a judicial mind nurtured in the traditions of Islamic ideals, values, and precepts to perceive the unfolding problems, social needs, and the thrust of social change against the backdrop and seek and find in them the right solutions to the issues that come before them for resolution. This imperceptible process can be a reality, he said. There is no need, nor it is desirable to state the source of such chosen solution by Islamic labels. This is what he said, yeah? So in Malaysia, where the constitution is the supreme law, legislation enacted by parliament must pass the test of constitutionality and consistency with other laws. While parliament has not yet embarked on constitutional amendments along the lines suggested by Muhammad Imam, there are disturbing signs that legislation intended for general application are now subject to the scrutiny of religion bureaucrats who can halt the implementation of such laws. A case in point is the Domestic Violence Act 1994, which could not be brought into force for almost 2 years as certain provisions were said to be contrary to Islamic law and could not be implemented in their present form. The same fate befell proposed law reforms seeking to preserve the status quo of parties to a civil marriage where one spouse has converted to Islam. It appears that in addition to constitutionality and compatibility with other laws, Sharia compliance is now becoming part of the law-making process. Muhammad Imam's opinion on the significance of Article 3 in imposing obligations on government and the role of creative lawmaking by judges in Islamization of laws appears to have found some receptive judicial minds. In the case of Mio Atikur Rahman Isha, the High Court held that Article 3 obliges the government to preserve, promote, and propagate Islam to the full extent of its capacity. The court put forward several ways that the government ought to give effect to Article 3, such as by setting moral codes, as well as to make rules to ensure the supremacy of Islam as the superior religion. The practice of non-Islamic religions should be conducted and observed so that it is exercised in peace and harmony and does not endanger the superior position of Islam. In the case involving the Catholic publication, the Herald, I think most of you will know about this case. The Court of Appeal, even citing Muhammad Imam, held that Article 3 is not a mere declaration, but that it imposes positive obligations on the Federation to protect, defend, and promote Islam and to give effect by appropriate state action to the injunction of Islam and to facilitate and encourage people to hold their life according to the Islamic injunction on spiritual and daily life. The court also held that Article 3 places the religion of Islam on par with the other basic structures of the Constitution. The reasoning being that it is the third in the order of precedence of the articles. Article 11 is to be read subject to Article 3, according to them. The article on fundamental liberties having been grouped together subsequently under Part 2, the insertion of the words in peace and harmony in Article 3 was to protect the sanctity of Islam and also to insulate it against any threat. Other judges do not go to such lengths. However, they abdicate their judicial duty to hear, determine, and grant remedies. They concede jurisdiction to Sharia courts, effectively acceding to claims that Sharia laws ought to override the civil laws. These courts, when they face objections that issues involving Sharia matters or law ought to come within the jurisdiction of the Sharia court. One bench of the Court of Appeal has gone so far as to elevate the Sharia courts to the status of the High Court, holding them to be courts of coordinate jurisdiction. In the case of, for example, in the case of Saravanan, the judgment proceeded on the basis that Article 1211A of the Federal Constitution, which provides that the civil court has no jurisdiction in respect of any matter within the jurisdiction of the Syariah Court, means that the Constitution recognizes the coexistence of the two systems of court in the administration of justice in this country. And as such, the two courts must be regarded as having the same standing in this country. This is but one short step away from conferring supremacy of the Sharia court over the High Court, my friends. Now, Article 121A was inserted none other by our brother Anwar Ibrahim. Okay, remember this. He actually put the amendment into Article 121A, and this is the result of it. So, such judicial revisionism impacting on the character of the Malaysian polity with its serious implications on the national legal order is a worrying development. Article 3, which was intended to be innocuous, which means harmless, and which expressly provides that nothing in it derogates from any other provision, is now construed to impose obligations on government and on governance to the extent that the article is held to have an overarching effect over other provisions. The incremental and gradualist way of building a set of judicial doctrine premised on Article 3 is both disingenuous and startling, wholly unsupported by and indeed contradicted by the Constitution as previously construed by the highest court of our land. The case of Che Omar Che So, okay, where the court says Article 3 only referred to acts as relate to rituals and ceremonies, or whether it is an all-embracing concept which encompasses a comprehensive system of life, including jurisprudence and moral standards. Please read the case Che Omar Che So. Tun Saleh Abbas rejected the very wide interpretation which would have compelled the court to hold that the death penalty was un-Islamic and therefore unconstitutional. The judicial reasoning was that had it been otherwise, the Constitution would have contained another provision to the effect that any law contrary to the injunction of Islam will be void. Instead, Article 162 preserves continuity of secular law which had been enforced prior to the Constitution, and further provides that such laws are to be enforced unless they are contrary to the Constitution. So it flies in the face of any legitimate interpretation of the Constitution and its legislative history. My friends, the implications are far-reaching. So now we go to the final subject matter, which is national legal order, repository of judicial power. In short and in simpler words, our judges. Now, judicial independence is imperative in a nation governed by the twin pillars of the rule of law and the supremacy of our Constitution. So this requires that the courts be presided by men and women of integrity, competence, and courage. In the face of loud voices demanding the Islamization of law and the legal order, judges must act impartially regardless of their own religious beliefs. Judges, as do members of the legislative and executive arms of the government, take oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Article 124 refers to the 6th schedule of the Federal Constitution prescribing the oath of office and allegiance. And it reads, I will faithfully discharge the duties of that office to the best of my ability, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Malaysia and will preserve, protect, and defend its constitution. As the judicial arm of government, they are not encumbered with the superadded obligation to defend and promote Islam to the full extent of their capacity or to facilitate and encourage people to order their lives according to the Sharia. In 1988, judicial independence in Malaysia suffered a serious attack. The express conferment of judicial power on the High Court of Malaya and the High Court of Borneo was removed. Article 121 was amended to delete the term judicial power of the Federation and to provide that the 2 high courts shall have such jurisdiction and powers as may be conferred by or under the federal law. Again, Article 121A or 121 was amended back in the 1980s by you know who. Henceforth, they will also have no jurisdiction in respect of any matter within the jurisdiction of the Syariah Courts. The new Article 121A provides the courts referred to in clause 1 shall have no jurisdiction in respect of any matter within the jurisdiction of the Sharia courts. So what is the position of the law where both courts have jurisdiction? Does the provision imply that the Sharia court can oust the jurisdiction of the civil court? What is the position where the subject matter in dispute involves a non-Muslim who is not subject to the jurisdiction of the Sharia courts? There are authoritative and binding decisions of the Apex Federal Court on the judicial authority of the High Court, which will overcome any disputation over the clash and contest for jurisdiction over a subject matter. But these appear to have been ignored. One example is where the Federal Court in Subhashini Rajasingham case and other appeals gave no heed to its own decision in Latifah binti Mazin case. In Latifah, the Federal Court held that unlike the civil high courts, the Court of Appeal and the Federal Court, all of which are established by the Constitution itself, a Sharia court in a state is established or comes into being only by the enacting powers of the state legislature. So the position of the Sharia courts is similar to the sessions courts and the magistrate courts, which are referred to in the Constitution as inferior courts. So again, the case of Abdul Kahar also is the same, So of late, it is becoming distressingly frequent for the High Court in matters where it does have judicial power to act, to decline to do so in the belief that it would be more appropriate for the Sharia court to act and accede the jurisdiction to the Sharia court. This occurs even where there are serious constitutional issues that are within the sole purview of our high courts and the appellate and apex courts. They mainly involve the religious status of a litigant, for example, the case of Lina Joy, and then the case of a spouse, where Miss Masosai was seized by the Islamic authorities when she went to court to ask that she be registered as a Hindu rather than a Muslim. But she was then taken into an Islamic rehabilitation center, and she said she was subjected to mental torture for insisting her religion is Hinduism. So many cases, my friends, so many cases. And so I just, again, like Murti case as well. Matters of cases in succession, marriage, and custody, so many cases. So the fact that these cases have a divisive impact on families and for children adds a poignant and often painful dimension to the case. In cases where the High Court declines jurisdiction in favor of the Sharia court on questionable grounds, a non-Muslim party can be left without any access to justice. The Sharia court giving no recognition to non-Muslim applicants. The principle ubi jus ubi idem remedium, where there is a right, there is a remedy, is discarded in such cases. As you know, in Murthy's case, the court held the issues of conversion were within the jurisdiction of the Sharia court and declined jurisdiction. The case of Nur Kusya binti Badaruddin, cited in support of the decision, is which in fact can be distinguished as all parties in the case were Muslim. So, you know, this is the problem. And the judge actually asked in court, she is not a Muslim and cannot go to a Sharia court. When she goes to a civil court, the respondents there will say that the case cannot be tried in a civil court. So she has no remedy. Then the counsel from AGC, yes, she has no remedy. The answer was greeted with loud murmurs from the public gallery. And the judge asked, is there something wrong then? And the whole court went silent. So in conclusion, my friends, the policy introduced by our Dr. Mahathir administration in the early 1980s, innocuously promoting Islamic universal values, became a platform for certain quarters to embark on a drive to change the fundamental character of Malaysia polity and its legal orders. Will Malaysia end up as an Islamic or quasi-Islamic state by the gradual and subtle rewriting of her foundational document, which is our federal constitution? As Professor Shad Salim Faruqi notes, that Sharia courts are being placed on a higher pedestal than the ordinary courts, even on issues that involve constitutional rights. In his view, a silent rewriting of the constitution is taking place. This is in his article in The Sun titled Seeking Solutions. Or will Malaysia retain her character as an essentially secular nation? These developments in Islamization threaten to subvert the very foundation on which we, the citizens, and the territorial components of Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak have held together as one nation. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for the first question. Have everybody fallen asleep?
Okay, thanks, Siti Kashim, for sharing with us how Islamization started and how it develops through different administrations. We also heard from Siti Kashim just now the transition of the Sharia court from only having a limited jurisdiction effect to, from what I perceive just now, is to have the ultimate intent of overtaking the other courts of supposedly of higher orders. But we have heard a lot of case studies and a lot of different interpretations of the federal constitutions that should be alarming to us. And I think this exposure, although it's quite lengthy and especially for for viewers from non-law background, but I think it's important information for us to know, because we need to understand the developmental history and what are the court cases and what are the articles or schedule of the constitution concerned with this particular issue we are discussing today. So thanks a lot for the informative sharing. Then now we'll move to our round 2. We'll focus more on the trend of Islamization in Malaysia. So now we'll go back to Prof. Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin. In your opinion, in a secular country like Malaysia is supposed to be a secular country, should religious agenda be the main driver of the development of a country? And how should politics, religion, and governments coexist without sacrificing unity and social harmony?
That question is 40 years too late. Should have asked that question 1970, okay? And then after 1980, that question is already becoming totally irrelevant, especially the word secular. Now, I was brought up in the Islamic Reformation to know the term secular to be a very, very evil term. Okay, and that was in what, 30, 40 years ago when I was in my 20s. And I held that belief for many years, following people like Syariah Courts, Hadi Awang, and international people like Maududi and Ali Shariati, when they talk about all this aspect about Islam being the new philosophy or the new value system that should take over the world in relation to having a more humanistic kind of agenda, because the premise there was that if people fear God, and God is the ultimate truth and justice, and therefore the world will be okay, as opposed to Western civilization where laws are made by popular vote. So if prostitution is popularly voted in, then it is in. If it is voted out, then it is out, something like that. So the word secular now has a very, very difficult situation or context. Now, I've always mentioned to a lot of Malaysians that we are in deep trouble because I've seen what's happening for the last 20 years. But after Siti Kasim's explanation, I didn't even know that we are in much more deeper trouble than this, that what we are having. But the problem here is that when we say such things like this, when I and Siti Kasim says we are in deep trouble, Malaysia is in that deep trouble, there we are setting ourselves up against the mainstream Islam already, because mainstream Islam, now I would respectfully disagree with Siti when he says that a lot of Malays don't support this. All around me, they support this. Okay, they are ignorant. That's 100%. As I said, professors are also ignorant. I've got people talking, professors talking like orang kampung, sama saja. Okay, so the idea that Islam cannot be part of the process of development is no longer a question. Okay, it is a fact. It is already a fact. Whether it is a part of policies, which before this I didn't know, or whether it is part of the legality, before this I didn't, before Siti was explaining, it is no longer a debate. Now, as I said, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that was on the floor to be debated. But here you look at UMNO also. Once upon a time, they make fun of past with all their so-called Islamization ideas, with a lot of things like, tangan kudung, having to go to be circumcised, so many ridiculous things that they have said. But why are they now so? Why do you think they are agreeing to everything? Before this, I knew that certain thing like RU355 was just a tactic to attract Malays, and then of course then use MCA or MIC to appease the non-Malays. It's just a tactic. But now it is closer to becoming a reality, and so it is something that non-Malays and non-Muslim must look at beyond this idea of, okay, the constitution was built up like this, and as well as the idea of so-called secularism. We have to even stop using the word secular, because once you use the word secular, then you are branded an enemy. So I've always said that I've looked at a lot of things. A lot of things has nothing to do with truth, has nothing to do with facts. It's always have to do with perception. And people say politics is perception. if you are perceived to be doing something good for Islam by mentioning certain words, by defending certain situation, by keeping quiet when something is being done that would make you unpopular among Muslims, it's a perception. So here is a dilemma. If the non-Muslim were to put up a fight and say that we want a secular Malaysia, then the rift between Muslim and non-Muslim will be deeper. So the challenge here is to look at one model in which where that's why once upon a time I think Siti Kasim disagrees with my view on this. I respect her for her views. I mean, these are views in which I said that, well, we need to have you have to work with a moderate, some sort of even the word moderate also cannot be used, you know. Yeah, it is seen to be as dirty as liberal. So there must be a group of Malay Muslims who holds Islam as a kind of a platform to actually use it for development. And that's why I wrote the article on the Malay Progressive Party, which is based on the idea of Malays who was once upon a time a cosmopolitan society with Buddhism, Hinduism, and other civilization as part of its history. Why should we ignore that? We should be proud of it. We should be proud of Malays being thought of that way. And then Malays also being a progressive corporate democratic entity. And lastly, I wrote and said that the Malays who is an Islamic reformist, okay, but the reformist within an idea, because if you research about the reformist, there are so many different ideas about it. Now, one of those ideas, especially I think in what Islamic Renaissance Run was trying to propagate by my friend Dr. Farooq Musa, that to me is the best Islam, because he was the one who taught and said that secularism doesn't mean that you are anti-God. It simply means that you keep your faith to yourself, but you can use your values in terms of debating in parliament. And if we were to trap ourselves within whatever religious dogma, be it Islam or any other religion, then we cannot move. And that is why the idea of so-called secularism comes into play. But we were taught in the Islamic Reformation, secularism equals to anti-God, a situation of anti-God. Okay, like communism doesn't believe in God. So this kind of thing. So what we are facing here, aside from whatever Siti has said, which I'm glad that I listened to her today, is the problem of education, problem of communication also. Communication, how do you communicate? All right, when you are unhappy with this thing, people are saying, well, why is this Buddhist society sibuk-sibuk pasal this Islam? These laws and all this are affecting only Muslim. How do you answer them? Or your answer says, well, we are afraid that we might infringe upon us. Oh, you think we are your enemy, is it? So once you think we are your enemy, then you are also our enemy. So who's the one who started the fight now? We call it. So here is where I have always said that we need a rethink about a strategic approach towards being Malaysian, and we cannot say such things like we want the Malaysia in the 70s or in the 60s. Now, to the eyes of Muslim, Malaysia in the 60s and 70s are full of Malay leaders pegang arak, botol arak kiri kanan, that sort of thing. This is the mindset. Because of the arak means you are bad. Even though there are many people who goes to mosque, who wears the turban, who speak about Islam, and there's all sort of things like rasuah, all sort of things like murders and things like that, and also things that are really, really disgusting, calling people names and threatening to kill, threatening to rape. They are considered to be okay, but alcohol is considered to be the chief of all evil. All right. So this is the narrative that is prevailing All right, and if you were to say that, well, Islam has to be taken out, I don't know how Islam can be taken out. Now, my friend Siti Kasim thinks that if we can change the government, we have the power to change policies, then we can set the country straight onto a better path. I would love to believe that. And once upon a time, I did believe that. But when I saw Pakatan Harapan took power, and when I saw they started to change the policy, but when I saw that the ground did not accept that policy, and when I saw that Pakatan Harapan did not deal with the ground, did not send in their soldiers of religion to handle the ground, and then I said that the power has shifted from the seat of governance of the ministers to the WhatsApp groups, to the mosque, and to the public at large. You are looking at pure democracy now at the moment because of the power of the people. But the power of the people, you know, doing all this fake news and not caring that it is fake or true, as long as it defends Islam, as long as it puts Islam in a very safe box. You know, what Muslims mostly want to do is to create a safe box. And this is the narrative that is in the mind of almost all Muslims, except people like me who says, why do you want to be in a safe box? You know, Islam is bigger than that. Islam can ride the wave of anything. You know, it can be better and greater than that. So the new narrative of Islam global, not of the IS, terrorist strategy, but more in terms of the idea of compassion and the idea of kindness and the idea of generosity and the idea of intellectual dynamism are all the traits of Muslims at one time, but they have been drowned by the idea of rituals overriding any kind of thoughts about the religion. So what I'm trying to say here is that there is no way, that is my view, that you cannot you have to take Islam out of the so-called politics and socio-politics of Malaysia. It's too late. It cannot be done. It is impossible to be done. If you try to do it, if a Muslim tries to do it, more so if a non-Muslim tries to do it, then the rift between these conservatives, Muslim and Malaysians will forever be entrenched, and nothing can be done. So I disagree that once you so-called change government, that you can change people. It doesn't work that way. And that's why I was saying that we need to have a parallel Malaysia where we rebuild the society outside of this Malaysia. It doesn't mean that we leave this Malaysia alone. We still try to deal with whatever we can deal with, but we spend more of our energy rebuilding ourselves, because there's a lot that we can do with our own self. Number one, just now, communication, strategy. We haven't thought about any other thing other than what we have been doing before. So we haven't done that. We haven't tried other things. There's so many other things that can be done. Same thing with when students talk about freedom of university. I said there are many things that you can do. Many. All right. Don't go and say, oh, Akta University is restricting this, restricting that. Don't do the thing that they don't want you to do. Okay. They don't want you to invite Lim Kit Siang. Go listen to Lim Kit Siang outside of the university. Oh, who's stopping you? Okay. Organize things outside of the university. That's apa. Okay, the vice chancellor just looking after their position. They just want their perks and all that. So don't cari pasal with that. Build yourself up in a different manner. So that's my take on the question. That I don't see that there is any way. Not because I want to. Once upon a time, yes, I was also one of those who fought for it, and wanted it. But now I don't think that it's being interpreted in a manner that I saw what the Prophet had done and his spirit and all that. And that's why I wrote the book, not the Islam I know. But then I am in the minority against all of 95% of my friends who have this view that conservatism, the traditional box, is our savior, and that box is the one that we're going to use for this country called Malaysia.
Okay, sorry, Prof, that the question came 40 years late. But Prof did highlight the difficulties to try to enforce so-called the Islamizations in Malaysia, whether it's through political change or other changes, and that he also encouraged the current generations to think of other alternatives, just not to repeat the same strategy we have been using, the same obstacle we couldn't overcome. I'm not sure whether Siti Kashim would like to respond to a few comments from Prof just now, but I will just go and direct my question. Maybe Siti Kashim could respond to some of the comments from Prof just now.
This is where Professor Tajuddin's view, totally very far from what I see the problem in Malaysia. You see, the parliament, I've said this many times before. Parliament is the heart of the nation. So without a proper, without people that can make change in parliament, the one that we elect, they have no courage to change, because they read on social media, things being said by certain people. So they think this is the mood of the majority. I think Professor Tajuddin should go to Twitter and see the Malays, how they actually really hantam the so-called ustads and the so-called political party PAS, how they disagree with the political Islam that is being practiced by PAS. They know that that is not Islam at all. I've always said that in order to change the country, we need to have good MPs, courageous leaders. Now, our MPs in our parliament right now, they do not dare to touch the elephant in the room. Okay, they will not dare to talk about sensitive issues, when this is the core problem of our country right now. I have promoted this idea of separation of religion and state. This does not mean that we ignore the religion entirely. No. Particularly in Islam, in which right now in Malaysia is being used to the maximum as a political tool, I say that give back the management of Islam to the sultans. I mean, this is what the constitution provides. Islam is under the sultans. The federal government has no business to manage religion. So they should manage the country for the benefit of all. Okay, they should not try to impose a version, any kind of policies based on what they feel as Islamic or not. So this is why I say that we need to elect the right member of parliament to be in parliament to set the right laws and the right policies. Only courageous members of parliament will do that, but not all of them. All of them are thinking for the next election, am I going to lose a vote from the Malays? You see, the Malays are not stupid lah, okay? The problem is that all these donkey years, for 30, 40 years, the government has been infiltrating the minds of the Malays with a certain version of Islam, and they brainwash the Malays that, oh, this is what you must do, this is what you must not do, using their vehicles. So this is why we cannot change, for as long as the manipulation of the minds of the Malays. If you go to the ground, when you explain to them about RUU 355, what it means, I can guarantee you they will not agree. So when PH was in power, PH did not use their, all the vehicles available to them to write to give the right message to the Malays, that we are not against our religion, Islam. But what have been taught to you were totally skewed. It's not the true Islam. This is why I say that, and to say that the non-Malays shouldn't actually, say anything because then you will become enemies. No, I'm so sorry. I disagree with that. You see, if the using of Islam is the cause of the problem of this country, and it affects all of Malaysians, all Malaysians have the right to say that we do not want political Islam in Malaysia. Okay, you have the right to say that we want a secular country with Islam as the official religion. That's fine, but as the intended intention is only for formalities and rituals and all that during government sort of events or whatever, but not to actually monopolize the whole life of our life in Malaysia is, according to what Islam, so-called Islam says. As I said, I don't agree with their interpretation of what Islam is a very restrictive and is very, it's not conservative, but, it's just not what I understand Islam to be. So federal government has no business in managing religion, any religion. Okay, so give it back to the Sultan. Let the Sultan manage. Let the state manage. This is their sort of is under the Sultan powers. So I disagree entirely with what Professor Tajuddin said, and I believe that as Malaysians, we have the right to chart the course of our country, no matter what race or what faith you are. Okay. So if you see that Islam has been used as a political tool, then you have the right to actually voice up your sort of sentiment. So when Islam is being used as policies towards our country, everybody has the right to say something about it, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, because eventually it will affect you. Not just eventually, it has affected the non-Muslims. In many cases. Okay, so this is the thing that I say, that we must actually speak up and not be afraid of being labeled as a liberal or as anti-Islam, because we are not. Everybody loves their religion, and the reason I speak up is because I love my faith. I love Islam, and I don't want Islam to be used by all these people, just so that they will be in power, they will get more money and all that, manipulate us. So that is why I keep on speaking about it, because Islam has been totally used and abused by these people. So don't stay silent, because if you stay silent, that means you accept what is going on. Yeah.
Okay, as Prof also share at the beginning of this talk, we all have different views, so it's a platform for us to be exposed to different views as well. So I will go back to the original questions I intend to pose to Siti Kashim, because we would like to understand more about the role of Syariah Courts in Malaysia, because the common narrative among non-Islamic community here is whatever we do with the Syariah Court or amendments to the Act, it would really affect the non-Islamic community. So we would like to hear from you whether it is a reality or it is just unnecessary worry among non-Islamic community.
The question has two parts to it, yeah. So basically, what the first is the role of Syariah courts in Malaysia, And the second is whether Islamization a reality in Malaysia. I think I will answer the second part of it. I mean, after explaining the first question just now, my presentation earlier on, what do you think? Is Islamization a reality in Malaysia? I think it is. Okay, that is my short answer to it, based on the development of the law, and and also the judiciary. How they, it depends on the judges as well. You see who actually sits on the case. So there is something must be done quickly, with regards to this separation of judiciary, executive, and legislative. This is something that we must aim for as well. So on the first part, what is the role of the Sharia courts? Okay, I will explain, in one word, that the Sharia courts role is inferior. And I think I know many people, these proponents of an Islamic state actually will hate me. Actually, they hate me for saying that. They don't like it, but that is a fact. The proponents of an Islamic state love to think that Islamic law and the civil law exist as parallel systems in Malaysia. The proposition is grossly inaccurate in law. As it stands today, the administration of Islamic law is confined to personal law for Muslims, and the Sharia court is subordinate to the courts established by the federal constitution under federal law. The Sharia court has in recent years become a prominent subject in public discussion, not least of all with the constitutional provision that Islam is the religion of the federation. Again, that seems to be a problem to some people. But in Indira Gandhi's case, everyone knows about Indira Gandhi case, where the husband converted to Islam and then converted the children into Islam, and there's a fight between Indra and the husband in the civil court and the Sharia court. But finally, our apex court has clarified the position of Sharia courts very clearly. So about the civil courts, the federal constitution's basic structure includes judicial powers such as judicial review, the principles of separation of powers, rule of law, protection of minorities. Parliament cannot remove such features by amending the constitution. The federal constitution, Article 121, vests judicial power exclusively in the civil courts. Judicial powers, including judicial review or the review of public authorities' actions and decisions, cannot be removed from the civil courts and cannot be given to any other body who do not have the same level of constitutional protection as civil judges to safeguard their independence. So the Sharia courts are inferior courts, period. They are creature of state law. Unlike the High Court, which is established by the federal constitution, the Sharia court is a creature of the state law. Article 74 of the federal constitution, read together with the state list, prescribes that Islamic law and Islamic matters, including the establishment of Sharia courts, fall under the jurisdiction of the state. According to the state list, the legislative power of the state assembly to legislate on Islamic law and Malay customs is confined to only 26 matters. So when there is a challenge to the jurisdiction of the High Court, the test was not whether the court has jurisdiction, but whether jurisdiction had been conferred on the Sharia court. Only if such jurisdiction were conferred on the Sharia court would the High Court be precluded from considering the matter before it. So this decision by the judges, the learned judges in the civil courts, as I said, it happens that we have a good quorum of judges at that time. So it depends on the judges who sit on the bench on a particular matter. So unlike the civil courts, the constitutional safeguards for judicial independence in Part 9 of the Federal Constitution, including judges' qualifications, appointment, removal, security of tenure, and remuneration, do not apply to Sharia courts. And Sharia courts' jurisdiction are limited. They may not exercise the civil court's inherent judicial powers, including the power of judicial review. Sharia courts are not given that power to review administrative decisions of public authorities. Their power to Muslims and Islamic laws, personal and family laws for Muslims, only for private law and not constitutional law. Okay, that's all their jurisdiction. And so under the Federal Constitution, Article 121A, says civil courts shall have no jurisdiction in respect of any matter within the jurisdiction of the Sharia courts. And the core question should be, does Article 121A grant exclusive jurisdiction to Sharia court in all matters of Islamic law, including those relating to judicial review? The short answer is no. Okay, so basically, their powers are limited. Their jurisdiction are limited. So in conclusion, quite clearly, the idea of a dual legal system in Malaysia of civil law and Sharia law is misconceived. Sharia law is only applicable to Muslims and only as personal law with provision for certain offenses against the precepts of Islam. Nothing in the Federal Constitution suggests that the Sharia court is to compete with or be parallel to the civil court on the same subject matter. And this is supported by judicial authority. The issue is of vital importance to the peoples of Malaysia, with their multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious history. The nation called Malaysia has no existence outside of the Federal Constitution, which is the supreme law of our country. A united and functional Malaysia can only exist when legal issues are determined in accordance with principle in well-reasoned judgments by the court, with a willingness to grapple with difficult issues without glossing over or avoidance or oversimplification or a giving way to sentiment. So again, it depends on who sits on the bench that will actually, will do the right thing lah. So as I said, is Islamization a reality in Malaysia, or it is just a worry among non-Islamic community? Let me be clear here. I believe Islamization is a reality in Malaysia if we do not change the people in parliament. And the worry is not just amongst the non-Muslims. Even amongst the Muslims, there are many who are worried where this country is going. Okay, so this worry is shared by all of us as Malaysians, because we do not want to see our country failed, become another failed state. If you want to, I'm not sure whether you guys know or heard of the Islamicity Index, which was created by 5 Muslims. This index actually every year they will go to all the countries in the world, and then they will pick the country based on Islamic principles, based on the Quran. And they will say, okay, is this country following what the Quran says, Islamic values? Then they will tick. And for the last how many years, the top 20 in the Islamicity Index are the Western countries, so-called Kafir countries. Malaysia is at number 40. and all of the other Muslim countries are all at the bottom. Why is that? Why is that? So it's a question that we must ask, why are these so-called Islamic countries at the bottom of the list of an Islamicity index, the values which are based on the Quran? So these are the things that I said, the way, Islam need to be reformed by, being called by many, many learned people in Islam, what we call as ustad lah, but not like Malaysian ustad lah. Okay, Malaysian ustad, they are. I don't even want to waste my time listening to them. So this is the thing that we have to look at. What actually being a Muslim and and what is Islam? So this is the thing that I believe that the Malaysian government, has actually play a role in misguiding the Muslims in the right path to God, basically. So that's what I have to say for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Siti Kashim, for the clear and concise explanations on the law of Syariah Court. Although the range of influence of Syariah Court is well defined, but how is subject to different interpretation and also who sits on the judge chair. So this is the true reality happening in Malaysia. Then now we'll move to the final round. We would like to listen to the two speakers on the potential effects of amendments to Syariah Court Criminal Jurisdiction Act 1965, or known as IUU 355. So I would like to ask Professor Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin, what is your opinion on this proposed amendments? Is it a political agenda, a religious agenda, or just an overdue amendment to an act that is already in its 45 years?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, if the question were asked to me roughly 10 years ago, it's definitely a political agenda. But if the question now is posed in this current time, and as I said, perhaps Siti Kasim has a different group of friends and relatives, and I have a different group of friends and relatives, I still maintain that most Malays are conservative Muslims. And therefore, the issue of the IUU 355 is now going to become, to me, a reality, like it or not. Simply because when we look at what is UMNO doing, who in the UMNO people or in the UMNO leadership is saying anything? We are also experiencing a strange silence from the hero of Malaysia, Dr. Mahathir, who is one of those who actually dared to question the so-called hudud laws. And then when Hadi Awang made it clear that hudud laws does not have anything to do with rasuah, when Mahathir clearly said that rasuah is stealing the people's money, and who among the Malay leaders are saying so? That's number one. Who among the so-called Malay intelligentsia is saying anything? Okay, maybe, at this point in time also, I have difficulty to find. And even if you found, it's only one or two. What happened to this whole institution that's called, we have 2 universities calling itself Islamic. Where are they? So when Siti says that a lot of Malays are disagreeing, I don't know where that numbers come from. I'm listening to a lot of silence from the so-called, especially as I said, the so-called intelligentsia, which is the universities. And I'm listening also to a lot of silence from those who are supposed to be well-learned in Islam. On the other hand, I am looking at a lot of television programs on Tanyalah Ustaz, okay, and so many other programs who have this Ustaz popular, who talks of nothing but rituals and very simple matters and touches nothing on the idea of Islam and modernity, Islam and contemporary global perspective, nothing. You would expect that billions of ringgit poured into something called the International Islamic University, you would expect that to be at the front line of discourse. Now, if you have time, you go and look at ISTEC, led by my friend Professor Osman Bakar. Look at all the titles, beautiful titles. And if you sit into the discussion, it's a very open discussion. But none of what he says is in the media. And he himself does not really care that it goes into the media. So how do you expect to change the mindsets of this so-called many Malays? And that's why I said that you need a new strategy. Now you can follow what Siti says. And as I said, I sincerely wish that I could agree with her and follow that strategy. But I know that that strategy that she had outlined will cause greater rift within our nation. Not that I'm afraid of rifts, but I'm saying that it will fuel the thing that we did not want to fuel. Okay, so when Siti says also that we cannot stay silent, well, there's a lot of time when your wife says something, you really need to be silent because you don't really like what she says. Because if you say something else, then it would, create a greater difference, a greater conflict. And so silence is actually an option of wisdom, not being, not having, saying that it is a cowardly approach, but it is a tactical, a strategic, and something that needs to be learned and be understood in that manner. So when you look about this issue about the RUU 355, my response is simply to let the Muslims handle it. My advice to the non-Malays, non-Muslim, you should stand back and let the Muslim take charge of the issue. Not to say that you cannot, because as I have explained, democracy and freedom of speech and all that allows you to do that. But it doesn't mean that you should. There must be wisdom there. I'm not saying, no, don't speak. No. I wish we could speak, but I know speaking will cause more points to the party, such as Party of Islam or the Islamic Party, so-called Islamic Party. I myself don't believe they are, a true Islamic party, because I've seen the way that they handle themselves. So, but the point here is that tactics of politics and perceptions and how we move forward needs to be within with a wisdom perspective, not to just use the idea of just because we can speak, then we must speak. Okay? This is not a position of cowardice. This is a position of wisdom, a position of tactical consideration. And this is how we should approach those sensitive issues, because if not, then ultimately what we are doing will cause will speed up the so-called Islamization process. Even do you use the word Islamization process? We must stop the Islamization process. That is even already playing into the game plan of those who are actually wanting to have it. If you ask me, you want Islamization? Oh yes, we must have Islamization. Even Ketuanan Melayu, I keep saying that I have no problem with Ketuanan Melayu. But if you want to be Tuan, you should be a good Tuan, a Tuan that is generous, a Tuan that is adil, a Tuan at this and Tuan of that. You see, you need to use the words in a careful manner. Okay, freedom, like what do you call it, human rights and all these things. You have to change that word into something else, because this is communication. And in the first rule about communication, if you use the enemy's words or phrases that has already been educated in a certain manner, then you already lost the game. So the game is to use words, to use expression, and to use methodology and to use approach that they have not considered, that they can't detect. But the way civil society is reacting and the way the non-Malays are reacting, when I look at it, it's just the same. There is no difference. And so that's why I said that we need to look at ourselves. We, or the civil society and the non-Malays, are also the problem because the manner in which we approach the issue and the manner of our communication. Now, it is difficult for me to say so. It's unpopular for me to say so, but I'm an academic. I am not an activist. You know, I've never even gone to the street to demonstrate and all that, but I'm an academic and I look at every statement that comes out and the reaction that follows and the silence, more importantly, the silence that follows. And then I can make my conclusion about what I think should be the best way to proceed. So in summary, I would say that this RUU 355 among Muslim is seen in the traditional construct as a real religious issue that I think they would seem to be wrong if they oppose it. And this is something that we need to consider and to review the way that we approach the subject. Okay, thank you.
Okay, from what I gather, it used to be interpreted as a political agenda, but Prof has now seen it as a religious agenda to be handled only among the Muslim community. And Prof also advocated that maybe perhaps the best approach is not to speak loudly against it, but to consider other alternatives that have not been previously considered. Maybe to take a more calm and measured communication strategy and so on to tackle this issue. Then so now we move to Siti Kashim. This is the last question of these 3 rounds. As a lawyer, what is your views on the impacts of these proposed amendments on the jurisdiction system of Malaysia? I believe you may have covered it in the previous round, but we also like to hear more about whether this rising power of Syariah Court, if the amendment is passed, potentially threaten the status of other courts and also the secular system of our country.
First, I want to say that this RUU 355 is nothing religious at all. Okay, please. It is so. I disagree with again with Prof lah. Sorry lah, Prof. But anyway, with regards to your question on RUU 355, as a Malay and a Muslim, I am more concerned with the impact on first the Malay community. I'm not sure whether the Malay community understands the implication of this amendment on them. These people who are pro-increment of the punishment in the Syariah courts are those that you would never see being dragged into Syariah courts, being charged and suffer from this increased punishment. Those who will go through these will be the common people, the rakyat mahren, ya. Rakyat biasa yang tiada kabel atau connection. Really, these are the people who will get the full brunt of this increment of punishment. So I'm not sure whether anyone is clear about what is RUU 355. RUU 355 is purely about the increase, as I said earlier in my presentation. The Sharia courts only can act and behave and do whatever they want if they were given the power to do so. So this is why they are trying to manipulate the Malays by saying that, oh, this is to empower the Sharia court. This is to memperkasakan Sharia court. Now, sebenarnya, this RUU 355 is to increase the punishment in the Sharia courts. okay, the Sharia courts right now can only punish the Malays, okay, based on what the Sharia enactment they have in each state. Maximum 3 years imprisonment, 5,000 ringgit fine, and 6 lashes. And that is the maximum, yeah, they can actually punish you in the Sharia court. Now, what these PAS people, or PIS I call them, because their name is Parti Islam se-Malaysia. I don't know how they get PAS though. But anyway, these PAS people, they want to increase the punishment from 3 years to 30 years imprisonment. From 3 years to 30 years imprisonment. If you get caught for not going prayers, Friday prayers 3 times, if you get caught khalwat, khalwat is not just having sex. It's not about having sex. Yeah, khalwat is if you are in a close proximity with a non-muhrim, meaning that if I sit with an Uber driver or a Grab driver in a car, that is a khalwat already. So this is a conversation I had with the Grab driver one day about RUU 355. And he is a staunch Muslim. Okay, at first he thought of me like, oh, Siti Kasim, the one who hates Islam, as usual lah. So when I explained to him why I am against RUU 355, and I said, do you want, right now we are committing khalwat. If they catch us, they can bring us to the Sharia courts and punish us. Instead of 3 years, they can go to 30 years. Instead of 5,000 ringgit fine, they can fine us 100,000 ringgit fine. And instead of maximum of 6 lashes, they can go to maximum 100 lashes. Do you want that? Instantly he said, oh, no, I don't want that. This is not fair, he said. So this is what I said. If the powers that be explained the true situation to the rakyat, you think the Malays want to accept this kind of so-called memperkasakan Sharia court? No, I don't think so. So this is, of course, reading from the news, we can gather that Ismail Sabri government is intensifying efforts to draft the Sharia Courts Criminal Jurisdiction Amendment Act, commonly known as RUU 355, to increase the criminal jurisdiction powers of Sharia courts. He said throughout 2020, 2021, the government, through the Shara and Civil Law Technical Committee under the National Council of Islamic Religious Affairs, held a series of meetings to discuss RUU 355. So they are looking at various aspects, especially the Constitution and Shara law, so that RUU 355 is more comprehensive and further strengthens the criminal jurisdiction of the Sharia courts. Now, I will show you a bit later what do they mean by strengthening, memperkasakan the criminal jurisdiction of the Sharia courts. Let me put the ground, information here. There's no way the Sharia courts can actually, punish offenses like robbery, killing, raping, and all that. The criminal jurisdiction, the criminal sort of offenses cannot be taken by the Sharia courts because this is under the federal list. So it will remain in the civil court. So therefore, the one that remains in the so-called criminal enactments of the Sharia courts will be mainly on so-called sins, personal sins. You don't go prayers, or maybe not wearing tudung. Oh yeah, if you go against the Jabatan Agama Islam, okay, if you disagree with them, you can be punished as well under the criminal jurisdiction of the Sharia enactment. You don't pay your what is it, the yearly thing, like tax, the Muslim tax. What is it called? Prof, apa dia? Setiap hari raya you kena bayar tu, apa benda Allah tu?
Zakat.
Zakat, yes. You don't pay zakat also, you can be penalized. And right now is the maximum 3 years jail or 5,000 ringgit or the 6 lashes. Is actually maximum they put if you don't pay zakat. Now, so our PM Ismail Sabri said this RUU 355 of the Syariah Courts is currently in the midst of drafting and will be presented to the state for discussion middle of next month, which is in general just for formality's sake. Once it is adopted, it will then be tabled in Parliament. And the Deputy Minister in the Prime Minister Office, Ahmad Marzouk Sha'ari, said a Waqaf bill, Mufti bill, and Sharia Court bill were the other new laws being planned, including a bill on control and restrictions on the development of non-Muslims religions. You see, all this we haven't have any opportunity to cite yet. We don't know what they are drafting. So he claimed these new laws are part of a 5-year plan by the federal government in which 11 changes will be made in what they claim to strengthen Sharia laws, which will include amendments to existing legislation and 8 subsidiary Sharia laws as part of the government's empowerment plan. So he was quoted in Haraka Daily saying that the government has drafted a plan to strengthen Sharia laws, especially in the federal territories, over a period of 5 years from 2020 to 2025. In this empowerment plan, the government has proposed to enact 11 key Sharia laws, which include the enactment of new laws and amendments to existing laws. So, on the amendment to the controversial Sharia Courts RUU 355, Ismail said the government would always take steps to strengthen the position of the Sharia courts for them to be on par with the civil courts. Among the steps that have been taken this is according to him to empower and improve the Sharia courts in line with current developments, to establish a committee to study and all that. So you know now that they are trying to study all of the provisions in our federal constitution to amend, whatever that actually, as I said earlier on, they are a creature of state laws. They have no power. So we don't know yet what they're going to amend in our federal constitution. So he said, again, the empowerment of Sharia courts includes increasing the level of competence of Sharia judges, Sharia prosecutors, and religious enforcement officers, improving governance and infrastructure of Sharia courts, and the amendment of existing Sharia laws. So, okay, the most important thing now that we must remember, this is now no longer to be tabled in the form of a private member's bill from Hadi Awang, but a government bill. So what's the difference between the two, you may ask? You see, a private member's bill can be conveniently shelved and difficult to see the light of day. However, once it becomes government bill, it will definitely be tabled, debated, and voted. And the Deputy Prime Minister said to the public that the bill is not about hudud. To be clear, he was reported to say the bill is not about hudud. We want to empower Sharia courts. Is it wrong for us to empower Sharia courts? This is a big misconception and totally misleading. The said bill will pave way for the enforcement of hudud. let us be clear on how the Islamic criminal justice system is implemented in Malaysia. All forms of Islamic law, including the establishment of Sharia courts, stems from item 1 of the state list in the federal constitution. The relevant part of the item reads, the constitution, organization, and procedure of Sharia courts, which shall have jurisdiction only over persons professing the religion of Islam and in respect only of any of the matters included in this paragraph, but shall not have jurisdiction in respect of offences except insofar as conferred by federal law. In essence, it is up to Parliament to determine what offences the Sharia court has jurisdiction over, yeah? Now, in order to confer such jurisdiction to the Sharia courts, Parliament enacted the Act. To put it simply, Parliament in its wisdom provided the Sharia courts with the jurisdiction to try all offences against the precepts of Islam as long as the punishment for the said offences is within the limit set by Parliament. There is an important distinction here between two concepts, the offence and the punishment. Parliament sets the limit of the punishment. The offence is, however, created by the respective state legislative assemblies. This is the clear intention of the Act. Parliament does not name the specific offences on which the Sharia courts have jurisdiction over. It only provides the punishment. The current sentencing limit, as I said, is 3 years imprisonment, 5,000 ringgit fines, and no more than 6 strokes of the cane. So what will the new increment of this punishment if the bill goes through? As I said, it will become 30 years, 100,000 ringgit fine, and 100 lashes. Putting it in another way, the state legislative assemblies can create any Islamic offense within item 1 of the state list as long as the punishment for the said offences is within the limit set by Parliament. So now let us look at the Kelantan Sharia Criminal Code 1993. Can we share the screen right now and put it there so that people can see? As you can see, it provides the following hudud or offences. Yeah, can you guys see? Right. The offence is section 6, Sarikah, theft, amputation of the right. So they already have this under the Kelantan, and I believe Terengganu too. So if you look at this table, so if the bill is passed in its original form, meaning that the 30 years, 100,000 as well as the 100 lashes, it would allow for the implementation of all the offences mentioned above, except for adultery, sodomy, alien for wife, and iktidat if repentance is refused. If the bill is amended to reduce the limits as suggested above, it would still allow for the implementation of 3 of offences mentioned above: Qazaf, alien for husband, and shirb. So there is no need for the bill, you can bring that down now. There is no need for the bill to specifically mention the term hudud or any other offense for that matter, as long as it provides for punishment that corresponds to hudud offenses. The state legislative assemblies are free to create hudud offenses, although there are views that the creation of such offenses would be unconstitutional in any event. But it needs the person who's going to suffer from these so-called offenses to challenge it in the civil court. Otherwise, like many who has been going through the Syariah Courts, they don't want to challenge the provisions that's being charged against them, except the latest one, Iki Putra, where actually the first one was the trans women who challenged the section 6 or section 66 of the Negeri Sembilan, Sharia enactment. And then Iki Putra challenged for his arrest and charge in the Sharia court, something like accusing him for attempted gay sex or something like that. Attempted, yeah, not actually caught them in action, but they claim that he was getting ready to have sex. So he challenged it in court and he won. So this is, but how many people will actually know that they have the right to challenge if they get caught in the Sharia court, yeah? So in other words, if the bill is passed, Kelantan can still proceed to implement 3 hudud offences. So to those who claim that the bill on RUU 355 is not about hudud are wrong. The bill does not need to mention hudud to be about hudud. All it has to do is to provide for the sentence as prescribed by these so-called religious people. Tun Abdul Hamid Muhammad, the former Chief Justice, had rightly described the positions taken by PAS and UMNO. In his article entitled Pindaan Akta 355, Kesan Sebenar, he said, dalam hal ini, PAS mengatakan bahawa pindaan itu hanyalah untuk menaikkan bidang kuasa Mahkamah Syariah dan tidak kena-mengena dengan agenda hududnya. Kenyataan seperti itu boleh berbangkit daripada 2 sebab. Pertama, pemimpin-pemimpin PAS sendiri tidak faham kesan pindaan yang dicadangkan oleh mereka. Kedua, mereka faham dan tahu kesan yang sebenar. Tetapi mereka berkata demikian kepada bukan ahli PAS kerana tujuan politik. Untuk mengelirukan orang-orang yang tidak bersetuju dengan pelaksanaan hudud Islam dan bukan Islam dan memudahkan UMNO menyokongnya. Kepada ahli PAS, semestinya mereka akan mengatakan tujuan sebenar pindaan itu dan kesannya. Saya yakin sebenarnya pemimpin-pemimpin PAS faham dan tahu kesan pindaan yang dicadangkan oleh mereka. Mereka bukan bodoh, malah dalam isu hudud itu dari segi politik PAS lebih cerdik daripada UMNO. Maka saya menolak alasan pertama. Oleh itu, alasan PAS berkata demikian adalah alasan kedua, which is for political use, ya. Nampaknya pemimpin-pemimpin UMNO turut melaungkan, echoing apa yang dikatakan oleh pemimpin-pemimpin PAS itu. Saya percaya mereka berbuat demikian atas sebab atau sebab-sebab yang saya sebutkan di atas. Di sini saya percaya ada pemimpin UMNO itu yang tidak faham dan turut mengulangi apa yang dikatakan oleh pemimpin-pemimpin PAS kerana mereka tidak mahu UMNO dilihat sebagai menentang hudud. Satu lagi salah anggapan, maka mereka termasuk ke dalam perangkap PAS sekali lagi. Saya juga percaya ada pemimpin UMNO yang faham kesannya yang sebenar, tetapi mereka ingin berada dalam arus utama. Maka mereka juga turut melaungkan kenyataan yang sama dengan harapan akan memuaskan semua pihak, yang bagi saya adalah satu anggapan yang meleset. Selain itu, ada pula yang mengatakan bahawa pindaan itu hanya melibatkan negeri Kelantan. Ini juga tidak betul. Akta 355 adalah undang-undang persekutuan. Maka akta ini terpakai di seluruh Malaysia. Usul tersebut tidak berkata akan terpakai di Kelantan sahaja. So, the implications are clear. The bill, even if amended, would still allow for the implementation of hudud though not all offenses. Further, it would not be specific to Kelantan only. It would affect every state in Malaysia. The enhancement of the Sharia court's jurisdiction to such extent is against the basic structure of the Constitution. Criminal law is a matter under the federal list. Malaysia was established as a federation where the federal government has greater powers as compared to the state governments. It is for this reason that inconsistencies between federal and state laws must be resolved in favor of the former. And this is the reason why even non-Muslim must speak up, because our basic structure is going to be affected by this introduction of the amendment. Our federation, will be affected. Malaysia as a nation will be affected if we allow these people to amend this bill, giving more powers. So therefore, all Malaysians must speak up because we are defending the basic structure of our constitution. So this is an answer to Professor Judin lah. If the Sharia court is given such wide powers, even wider than the civil courts for caning, okay, it would upset the deference given to Parliament on matters on criminal law. It must be borne in mind that the civil courts are superior. Sharia courts are specialists or inferior courts only on matters in item 1 of the state list. As put by the former Chief Justice Abdul Hamid Muhammad in a famous federal court case, in fact, the position of the Sharia courts in this respect is similar to the session courts and the magistrate courts in respect of the last two mentioned courts, which the Constitution called inferior courts. So are we going to allow an inferior court overcoming our civil courts, which is more superior, and change the basic structure of our Constitution? I think not, and we must defend our Constitution as strong as can be, okay? So that is my presentation for now. If there's any question, I will ask. I will try and answer later. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Siti Kashim, for shedding light on not only the potential implications among non-Muslim community, but also what will happen to the Muslim community if the amendment is passed. What will be the consequences? And lastly, I think the emphasis is on how it challenged the basic foundations of our federal constitution, because Sharia court could potentially overtake the position of the other courts of higher order. This is why we need to be mindful of the development of this matter. So now we have collected a few questions from our YouTube and Facebook. In the interest of time, some questions I will only address to one speaker and some to both. Okay, the first question. The first question here I see is, this is addressed to Prof. Tajuddin. Do you see this advocacy for Islamization is more of an attempt by ulama to secure power for themselves by acting as sole agent of God rather than to promote or protect Islam?
Okay, now, if you were to follow the idea of as I said, the Islamic Reformation, all of these people are very sincere in their attempt to say that that we need to correct what is wrong in Malaysia, and what is wrong in Malaysia is all the secularism and all these Western-based ideas of constitution, laws, and lifestyles, and all these things, and they actually sincerely believe in that. To say that they are just there to actually stay in power, this is not right, because I followed past for 30 years. Okay, I have seen their way of life. I have seen their struggle. I have seen their the way that they have carried themselves. They are sincere. But then, when the country changed to in a different way, they are looking at it in a political strategy, in which when they worked with UMNO, and they first of all kick out what they call the progressive people, which is like Mak Sabu and Zulkifli and all these other people, and and so they brought in at the same time a very strategic alliance with UMNO. First of all, just to on what we call just sit together, but not actually working together directly. You can see the progress from berkhalwat to later on real marriage, and now they're divorced because they're now with bersatu. So we can see the opportunism there. But the point here is that the basis of the leadership in past, understanding of Islam, that is the way that they have understood the religion, and that is how they want it to be implemented. And this is part and parcel of their creed. Now, some of you were saying that no, they're just trying to use this as political. No, I don't believe that. They are very sincere, but being sincere doesn't mean that you're right. Okay, right for another context, which is say a group of people who sign on to become, say, the Federation of Malaysia Constitution like this, and we started like that. But of course, a constitution is also something that will evolve with time, and so that is why to say that these people are just playing to the gallery and things like that, it's not. UMNO plays to the gallery, that's correct, but not Parti Islam Malaysia. Parti Islam Malaysia, insofar as I understand it, they are very sincere. But sincerity is not something that is actually necessarily good for all, because the manner in which they look at the way of life and the interaction and our situation is something that, to me, will not build up Malays into what I call a global Melayu global, or to be a Muslim who is a global leader. Now, there are Muslims who try to be a global leader by exploding bombs here and there, and that is the way that they say that this is the right way to do it. Now, when as I said, we are friends, Siti Kasim and I, and we have this friendly disagreement. And when she says that who would want this kind of law, the answer is that, look, if you are good, you're not going to get punished. Okay, 100 lashes, 100,000 ringgit. This is to ensure that the Muslim toe the line and that Islam is preserved in its pristine ideas of good values and such like that. Okay, so this is the narrative of these people who will say that, what's wrong with having this? That's why I said this business about all these Islamic amendments, laws, and things like that should be kept. I mean, the discussion, public discussion, should be kept within the Muslim and Malay community. And I again disagree with Siti Kasim by saying that everyone must speak up. Cannot. If you want to speak up, then you speak up in the in the confines of a private discussion with your MPs. Look, if we have this thing, it's going to affect us like this, like this, like this. So perhaps you should vote differently in Parliament or in the Dewan Undangan Negeri. That sort of thing. Keep it private. But let the Malays who says that the ones that Siti Kasim says, a lot of Malays who disagree with this, let them come out. And I want to see them come out. I don't want to see Persatuan Buddhist, Persatuan Christian, and Persatuan Hindu talking about this issue, because it will fuel the fire. Yes, they have the right. Yes, they should defend the Constitution. But as I said, you must do it with wisdom. And there are times in wisdom that you must stay silent, but then not inactive. You are active in a different way, so that you can present a different strategy that is not to say that this is going to be Muslim against non-Muslim. It should be Muslims against Muslim. Okay, so that is the way in which, as I said, talking about strategy. I mean, my friend Siti Kasim has taught us all, including myself, all the legality aspect of the law, and she has the legal understanding, and she has the legal morality, and all this. But strategically, in the war of politics, I think that we need to think in a different way and cannot present things in that manner. And she perfectly explains the value of communication when Pa says kita tidak buat hudud, kita hendak memperkasa. How many people understands that? Not many people understand that. Hardly anybody understands that. And when you say to any Muslim, do you want Sharia to be diperkasa or not as a Muslim? How many Muslims are going to say, alah, janganlah kuat-kuat sangat, you know, I mean, yeah, they will definitely, if they go to pray 5 times a day, they will definitely say that. Except for people like myself and Siti Kasim, who is more critical. Which part are you talking about? We would ask that. In what manner? But most Muslims would say, of course, we must support. All right. So that is the position that I hold in terms of because of the situation, as I said, has drastically changed. 20 years ago, it's different. We could follow what Siti Kasim said 30 years ago, 20 years. We would not now. Now you need a different approach to this matter, and wisdom is the key to it. Not the idea of freedom of speech and all that, because that would put fuel to the fire.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Would Siti Kashim like to respond to that, or should I move to the next question?
Next question. It's getting late already anyway.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
actually, I of course I disagree lah, kan. It's very simple to me. When, as I said just now, why the non-Malays should also speak up, because it's affecting our federal constitution. It's not actually meddling into the religion. You know, you are actually this. You're not saying that, you know, your proposal is wrong, but what you're doing is actually affecting our basic structure of federal constitution, in which we all live on by our federal constitution, right? So we are defending our federal constitution from being butchered more and more by these people. Yeah. So if we don't say anything right now, they have amended the Article 121A, destroyed what we used to know. Okay, that give a lot of problems in our courts. So now, if you actually, you know, we allow this to happen, it will then affect another. You know, it will give a big hole in our federal constitution. So this is something that we don't know what they are drafting and all that. You know, we don't know what kind of butchering they are doing to our federal constitution. So obviously, you know, we have to be very alert and you know, and making sure that no more butchering of our federal constitution by these people, because as it is, what they have done before is causing a lot of problems. You know, I mean, I'm sorry to say, majority of Malays, you know, they actually think about their bread and butter. All right, so they don't care, you know, what this so-called past is. You know, I mean, to be honest, I don't know who you mix with, Taj. You know, to be honest, yeah. I go to the kampong, you know, everywhere I go, nobody cares about, you know, about these authorities, you know. But when I explain, as I said, one little example, but with the Uber, with the Grab driver, it shows to me, once you explain the truth, the real one, what is happening, then only they will say, no, I don't want that. You know, I don't agree with it. And so sorry to say that I do believe the Malays, if explained to them clearly that this amendment is not according to the Quran and not according to the Sunnah or whatever, this is a creation of past, you know, to increase, you know, to control the Malays. So, you know, I really hope the Malays please study the Quran yourself and see whether the punishment they have put in the Sharia enactment are really punishment from God. Tak setuju dengan Majlis Agama Islam tu, itu punishment from God ke tu? I mean, seriously, if you Melayu, you fikir that is punishment from God, there's something wrong with your head lah, kan? So really, I do think that don't underestimate the Malay community. With correct information and the right approach, they will choose the right one. Okay? We are not trying to dismiss Islam at all. We are trying to say that don't allow these political people using Islam as their political tool, and then they become richer driving Bellfire, and then saying Rasuah is not, you better choose a Muslim who accept Rasuah, corrupted Muslim, rather than a non-corrupted non-Muslim. And is that kind of leadership that you think sincere? Please lah, touch. These kind of people who say rubbish like this are sincere about Islam? Please. These are not Muslims to me, okay? What kind of Islam are you all practicing lah? So this is the thing, this is why I go back again to the power of the MPs. These are the people who have the vehicles, the platform to actually speak about these issues. So they are the one who should actually, do something in parliament. That's why in G15, please vote for people that will speak up about sensitive issues. That will will get the elephant in the room, and things like that. So we need leadership, real leadership, okay? These are the people, don't rely. It has to be top, bottom to change this country. There's no way that we can do it now, bottom, top, right, touch. No, it's not going to happen. It has to be, that's why when we go for election, use this one power that we have in our hand as a rakyat. Vote for people that will speak up for you. So this is why I say parliament is the key. Change the people in parliament. Okay? Even though they are your favorite MP, they do a lot of things to help your, the rakyat, things. But if they don't dare to speak in parliament, they are useless. Okay? You want to change the country, you got to get courageous, integrity kind of people in parliament. That's it. Okay.
Okay, I will just move on to two quick fire questions. It's more on the legal side. One of the audience asked, does it means that a Sharia court is on the same level as the native court in Sabah and Sarawak?
I do believe so, because these courts are not creation of, I'm not sure about that though, but if they are a creation of the state, so therefore they will be at the same level as the Sharia court, I suppose, as the session court and the magistrate court. Yeah. So I hope that will answer. But I think they are, all lower courts are actually inferior to the high courts and above. Okay.
Another quick fire question is if the IUU 355 is passed in the parliament, any chance that it can be challenged in the court that it is unconstitutional?
Well, actually, you can challenge. I mean, everybody has the right to challenge anything in our courts. But this is my opinion, okay, not necessarily agreed by other lawyers, but in my opinion, if it has gone through the parliament session, debated and voted for, let's say they pass, then it's hard for you to challenge in the court, because parliament has a special power. They have the right to debate and vote for any kind of bill that being put forward by the government or the MP. So I don't think that is a wise move. I mean, you can challenge, but I don't think you can win because they do have that prerogative. But you may be able to challenge on the implementation of it. So, for example, the state governments adopted this punishment lah. They increased the punishment, and then they start to implement in the Syariah courts. Okay, so when you get caught for any kind of offenses, then you may the person who has been charged and in the Sharia court can try to challenge that punishment, whether it's constitutional or not, or the offense, things like that. Challenge like Iki Putra, for example. So yeah, you can try that. That there is a possibility that is unconstitutional. Yeah. So this is I think is a better bet rather than challenging the powers of parliament. But as I said, how many people in the Sharia court have the money to challenge, have the connection, meaning have this knowledge that they can challenge, and then they will be too embarrassed. They will be too afraid, in fear. Okay, so it's difficult to get candidates from in Sharia courts to challenge when they get punished by the Sharia courts. I really, all this raid against the pubs and clubs, right? On them by the religious authorities. I just wish the establishment will actually take them to court, because it is questionable whether they can actually do that, to be honest, raiding, these places, as well as when you kena tangkap kalwat lah, for example. I know one case where this couple was arrested in a car for kalwat, and he challenged in court. It took him years to challenge, and with a lot of money as well, finished, but he won eventually. Okay, so we just need this type of people who will be brave enough, to go and challenge. Of course, money they may think, but if it's a public interest matter, to be honest, there'll be many lawyers who would help you for free. Because this is a public interest matter, whether religious authorities have the power to go and raid into your home and claim or arrest you in a car for so-called kalwat. So there are so many things that we need to inform the community lah, to know their rights. And I feel in Malaysia many people lack of knowledge, living in fear as well. So this is something that we must teach our people, Malay and non-Malays, all Malaysians, understand your rights and try, get out of that fear mode. Authorities can be challenged. So do that, yeah.
Okay, one last question, and I think this will be the concluding remark for both our speakers as well. We'll start with Prof. Tajuddin. The question from this audience is that with the current progress since 1918, the secular nation seems to be difficult to realize now. What do you think is the best way or solution for Malaysia to be better?
Yeah, as I have written in many of my articles, and I have written and watched the scenario of politics in this country for more than 20 years. Because I am an academic, my mind works in a different way. Perhaps if I were so-called an activist, then I would just pursue one thing like this and that. But as an academic, I would change the views and the perspective, looking at whatever that is coming out. And so when I see the rising aspect of conservatism or the tradition or Islam as a tradition, then you have to look at it in a manner of positive rather than talking about the negativity and saying that we are becoming too Islamic. If you're using these kind of terms, then obviously you're going to set up a different way. And that's why I said that number one, the way that the country can be progressed forward is for us to look at it is to first of all educate ourselves and then form somehow a relationship with all the different communities, different faiths, those who can, and build up the young people so that then in the future we would have a future. But if we were to say that the only way that we can change is to change people in parliament immediately, just like that, and then let's say make one of us a minister, we've seen ministers how they tried to do something and they were, bogged down by the so-called by the conservative Malays, and nothing can be done. And even the situation was reversed in the ICERT case, in the Rome what was it, the Rome Statute or something, all right, case. We can see even the involvement of the academics. We could see the Congress Marwah Melayu. So I think the way that the country should be progressing, number one, stop using the word secular. Although the idea of the constitution, I don't think any of the Muslim care 2 cents about the constitution. Okay, they don't care. Once you are gripped with this Islamic conservatism, you care in saying that, well, as long as I'm a Muslim, then it's okay for Malaysia, because Islam is the best and being a Muslim is the best, and there is the constitution may say this and may say that, but then it is built by the British, okay, who are not Muslim. Okay, so we work towards the day when it becomes very Islamic, and according to laws that is going to be so harsh in that sense, then this is all for the benefit of the Muslim. Look at there is a township that is all Muslim. There's a mall that is all Muslim,
and they fail.
This is coming out. Okay, so I'm not saying that I'm for that. I'm saying that in order for you to approach these people, you need to actually use a different communication aspect, and all these words like human rights, progressive, which is going to get you into trouble, you need to rephrase it in a certain way. As you said, PAS is using different words now. Okay, so that's how communication is. So we are in a situation where if we are going to do the things that, like I said, what Siti is trying to do, which in 30 years ago I would definitely agree, but it is not possible to do that in the present time. So we need to educate ourselves and educate our children and make sure that we flood the country in the next 10 or 20 years with the proper people with the right mindset, and only then can we have change. Let's say lastly I would say, let's say by the stroke of miracle, okay, Siti Kasim gets appointed to be a member of parliament and becomes a minister of women affairs, and she immediately put up the change that she says from top down. What would she do when ISMA comes with 2,000 strong to demonstrate against it? What would she do if PAS organized another 10,000 to come and say? What would she do if GAMIS, Gabungan Mahasiswa Islam, who were against the Jawi and all that, comes and demonstrate and all these things? What would the situation be then? Okay, so that is why I'm not in disagreement at all with what the intention of my friend Siti Kasim, but I am a bit more cautious in relation to the strategy that we need to take. I have no problem with upholding the constitution. Some say, oh, the constitution is already Islamic, and I can argue that too. All right, to use that. But some people say, no, there is no question of Islam or not Islam. It's a secular thing. That's it. this is the sacred law of the land. But again, the sacred law of the land is going to change when the people who are already conservative and they're already placed, they will change it. And that is where it's going to be heading towards. So that's why I said that it needs wisdom and it needs a tactful response. And again, I emphasize that any Islamic issue is best handled by the Muslims themselves. Let the Muslims come out. I haven't seen anybody except my colleague here and only one or two others, and that's about it. UMNO is playing to the gallery, and every single member of parliament, even Anwar Ibrahim and the Amanah people, are very silent on the issue. Why are they doing that? Because they know that the ground is still being is still carrying the narrative of conservatism, and that's why they are being careful. Siti's word is that they are being a coward. Okay, so for them, for me, I don't need anybody to vote for me to be a professor. Okay, but for them, they need people to vote for them to be a member of parliament. And so if they did not phrase certain communication very well, then they would lose whatever voter baseline that they have for them. Now, I'm not saying that that is the best way to do things, but I'm just saying that we need to think of a different way and not the direct approach that we are used to in the previous years, because that would definitely not achieve the desired effect that we want. So that's my final word on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Now we invite Siti Kashim to give her concluding remarks.
Okay, I will answer what Prof said. In the event by miracle I become an MP, and what would I do if in that situation? I will implement the right things. I don't care about this ISMA or whoever, because you see, it is not about them. It's about the rakyat, the people of Malaysia. What is the policy will be good for the whole of Malaysia? Okay, so the point here is that when you're a leader, you need to explain. You have the machinery, you got TV, you got radio. Use it. Explain to the people why I decided to do this, and rebut these people who claim that it's against Islam or whatever. I bring my expert and say that this is not. Use my machineries, my vehicles, the radio, the TV, the social media. You are the boss. You are the leader, You are supposed to make decision what is good for the rakyat. Why do you succumb to these stupidos? Then you are no leader then. You are not a leader. You are not a leader with courage if you succumb to all these little bits of noise here and there. Okay? That's my answer to you, Prof. Now, okay, what was the question? I lupa lah. What is it? Oh, the secular thing. How are we going to regain back? Now, if follow Prof ways, okay, I don't think we will ever get back, what our federal constitution say, that essentially we are a secular nation, but maybe not fully secular because we have the Syariah Courts. So therefore, we are adapting our secular nation to providing space for the Sharia courts, or affairs. So it is still a secular nation at the heart of it. So how do we get it back? How do we want it to go back? Where times where there is no moral judgment, there is no, all these kind of things that's going on by certain people in controlling our lives. I say again, go back to parliament. You need courageous leaders that will just do it. Okay? Whether they're going to get elected again or not, it doesn't matter. That 5 years, if they implement good policies and they do the right things, I can who knows, maybe the electors actually like what he or she is doing as their MP, and they may get elected again, for doing their job for the nation. So this is the thing. When you think that, I must not say certain things because it is too sensitive and I don't want to lose my vote, then it shows that you only think about yourself. You're a selfish MP. You want to get voted again, And why I say political parties don't work anymore in Malaysia is because they have political warlords. They have to follow their warlord. If Anwar Ibrahim said don't vote, nobody votes. What the hell? Come on. You are representing your constituencies. You're not representing Anwar Ibrahim or Zahid Hamidi or Ismail Sabri or whatever lah. You are supposed to listen to your constituencies, not to your bosses. What does your constituency want? They want you to vote to go against the budget, then you vote against the budget. That is why political parties in Malaysia are hopeless. They listen to the bosses. Bosses say this and that, If not, they won't get their place again the next election. They are so afraid of losing their seat, because they can be replaced by the leadership. This is stupid. Where is the rakyat that come into it? And this is why vote for Gerak Independent. We are not saying we are going to take over the country. No, we are going to test the ground. We are going to see in the next election, GE15, we are going to put in maybe 7 to 10 candidates. And these people have been vetted. And they have no bosses. Their bosses are their constituencies, yeah? So, if the rakyat feel they want to change, then they try this independence under Gerak Independent and see whether we can make a change. Because we are not going to follow anybody telling us what to do. We are going to listen to our constituencies, yeah? And we are going to vote not against the government or pro opposition or whatever. We are not pro anybody or anti anybody. The Gerak Independent will be on the side of the right. Okay, if the policies and laws which are put forward are good for the rakyat, that's what we will do. We will vote with them. So that's how it works. Okay, but if the people still think the current ways of political parties still work, and no Gerak Independent being given the mandate, then goodbye. We have tried our best, okay, and we have tried to be the change. But if the rakyat cannot see that, then we are not going to waste our time lah. Okay, we try to. At least when I die, I will be happy. At least I try my best to change the way the rakyat vote and the rakyat think. Okay, so this is something that people must understand. Why Parliament is important, because these people are the one who are going to hate the agencies in government, the education. Now, why do we have people now so leaning to so-called religion lah? It's because they have been brainwashed for the last 30 years in education, all about a skewed version of Islam. And this is what they must do, okay? They must do that. So what you see now is the product. And who put all this kind of rubbish in our syllabus school syllabus, indoctrinating our children? It's the minister. They are in power. Okay? So, they hate all of these government agencies. They are the one who put down the policies and everything like that. So that's why I say Parliament is the key. If you have strong education minister, will do the right thing. Okay, they will put the right syllabus in our school. Not to say that it's wrong to have religious subject. I have religious subject when I'm studying, but you know, the data being manipulated, you know, this ketuanan Melayu lah ni, Melayu, even Indian continent also jadi Melayu punya continent. What rubbish is this, you know? So the the distortion of our history, everything is sick. We are a sick nation. So I do hope the next election, you know, people will open up their eyes. So this is my final advice to my fellow Malaysians here. Think wisely when you vote next time. Make sure the person is not somebody just because they have a political party which you are familiar with or somebody you like. See their performance. What have they done, you know, whilst they were in parliament? So this is the thing that, you know, give the independents a chance. The undergerak independent. Thank you very much.
Okay, so with this, we have come to the end of this online forum. We'd like to express our gratitude to our speakers of the day for accepting our invitations and for their detailed and informative sharing throughout this forum. And thanks also to our co-organizer, Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia, Central for Malaysian Chinese Study, and Persatuan Belia Siang Malaysia, and all our viewers. Please continue to keep yourself updated on the topic we discussed today, and have a good night, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Good night. Bye, Siti.
Bye. Bye. See you all again.
Bye. Thanks
Oh,
again.